The president says he's not stopping there, making clear that Apple's rivals and some of the biggest tech companies in the world have also been put on notice. It would be more, it would be also Samsung and anybody that makes that product, otherwise it wouldn't be fair. So anybody that makes that product, and that'll start on, if they make that product now, again, when they build their plant here, there's no tariff. So they're going to be building plants here. Apple losing roughly $92 billion in value today on that news. iPhones, it would increase the price of an iPhone to $3,500 if the iPhone had to be made in the United States. I'm saying to everybody, they've treated us very badly over the years. It was formed in order to hurt the United States, in order to take advantage of the United States, and they've done that. I just said it's time that we play the game the way I know how to play the game. They've taken advantage of other people representing this country, and they're not going to do that any longer. It all started with a tweet. Not a war declaration, not a formal press conference, just a tweet. But behind those few characters typed from the Oval Office was a warning shot that could shake the global tech industry to its core. No one expected what was coming. Not Apple, not Wall Street, not even the American consumer who's casually scrolling on an iPhone right now. Something big was brewing and no one saw it coming. This isn't just about smartphones. This is about power, pressure, and the push to reshape how America does business with the world. On the surface, it looked like President Trump was merely urging Apple to bring iPhone manufacturing to the United States. But under that demand was a challenge, one that could collapse stock markets, redefine tech supply chains, and impact every single person holding a smartphone. Let's take you back to the moment this fire was lit. In a bold move, President Trump warned Apple to either build hundreds of millions of iPhones in America or face tariffs of 25% on every device made overseas. And he didn't stop there. He extended this threat to all tech giants, saying that if any company made products outside the US, they'd pay the price. President Trump is now threatening Apple with an industry-altering ultimatum. Either build hundreds of millions of iPhones in the United States or pay tariffs of at least 25% on iPhones that are made overseas. The president says he's not stopping there, making clear that Apple's rivals and some of the biggest tech companies in the world have also been put on notice. It would be more. It would be also Samsung and anybody that makes that product. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair. So anybody that makes that product, and that'll start on, I guess, the end of June. It'll come out. I think we have that appropriately done by the end of June. So if they make that product now, again, when they build their plant here, there's no tariff. So they're going to be building plants here. But here's the twist. Apple doesn't even make its own products. They rely on massive global supply chains, especially companies like Foxconn in China. To shift that production to the US isn't just inconvenient. It's nearly impossible. We're talking about hundreds of factories, tens of thousands of skilled engineers, and a complex production process involving over 1,000 parts per phone. Still, Trump's ultimatum wasn't just a business decision, it was a political power play. The goal? Force American companies to invest in American soil, even if that meant breaking the model that made them global giants. But what happens when power meets resistance? So what did President Trump actually expect Apple to do? On paper, it sounded patriotic. Bring jobs home. Build factories in America. Make the iPhone a true American product. But behind that slogan was a demand that many experts called fantasy. You see, the iPhone isn't just a phone. It's a technological masterpiece built with over 1,000 micro components. Every year it's redesigned, upgraded, and pushed to be faster, slimmer, smarter. Now imagine trying to recreate that entire operation, factories, skilled labor, logistics in the United States. The cost? Insane. The time? Nearly a decade. The reality? As one analyst put it, it's like trying to grow pineapples in Alaska. But you have to remember that they build 230 million iPhones a year. And this is a really complex product that gets redesigned every year. So it's not like you set up a production line for a car and build the same thing for the next 6 or 7 years. The iPhone has new components, new battery, new cameras every single year. That makes automation really difficult. That makes the whole process really complex. Apple doesn't even build its phones. It designs them. The actual manufacturing happens in cities in China and India, industrial towns with 500,000 workers living on site. That's how they build 230 million iPhones a year. Try doing that in Pittsburgh or Detroit. One analyst said it best. Doing this in Pittsburgh is ludicrous. Tim Cook, Apple's CEO, knows this better than anyone. And Trump, well, he wasn't buying any excuses. In fact, Trump believed Cook had played him during his first term, promising to build 3 big, beautiful factories that never happened. So what does Tim Cook do next year? Do you think he comes out with some kind of announcement? Let's remember what he did last time, which is he really ran the clock out on Trump's presidency. So in 2017, I believe it was, Trump announced that Tim Cook had promised to build 3 big, beautiful factories in America. That never came to be. And I think it's going to be difficult for Tim Cook to sort of make the same claim because Trump's sort of onto him now. Now, Trump was back with a vengeance, warning that no more empty promises would be accepted. To make matters worse, Apple had made huge financial pledges, first $430 billion, then $500 billion to invest in America. But where were the factories? Where were the jobs? According to experts, those numbers looked good in headlines but meant little on the ground. What Trump demanded wasn't a suggestion. It was a line in the sand. Either Apple moves manufacturing home or it pays up. But Apple was staring at a fork in the road with no easy turn. And here's the chilling part. Apple wasn't the only one. On his radar, Tim Cook was in a tight spot. One side, he had the President of the United States breathing down his neck, demanding action, factories, and a full-scale return to American soil. On the other, he had the cold, unforgiving reality of global economics. This wasn't just a CEO under pressure. This was a man trying to protect one of the world's most valuable companies from political crossfire. Let's not forget, Apple's business model isn't built around one city or country. It's built across continents. Its supply chains stretch from China to Vietnam, from India to Ireland. Rewiring that entire system overnight? Impossible. But Trump didn't want excuses, he wanted results. Tim Cook had been here before. Back in 2017, Trump proudly claimed Cook had promised to build 3 major factories in America, but years passed. Nothing happened. Not one shovel hit the ground. Now the pressure was mounting again. This time, Trump wasn't just suspicious, he was angry. He believed Cook had made flashy announcements to win time, and now that time was up. Apple had tried to calm things with big money headlines. A $500 billion investment in America announced in February was supposed to show commitment, but analysts weren't convinced. They called it a smokescreen, pointing out the obvious. If Apple was really reshoring jobs, we would have seen factories popping up across the country by now. But we haven't. This left Tim Cook with a brutal choice. Play along again and hope Trump's term ends before action is needed, or take a real risk by fighting the tariff head on. And then came the bombshell. Trump wasn't stopping at Apple. Samsung, Google, anyone producing overseas was now in the blast zone. This wasn't just a warning to Apple, it was a declaration of economic war on the entire global tech industry, and that sent a chill down Wall Street's spine. Within hours of Trump's ultimatum, the tremors reached Wall Street and they hit hard. Apple, one of the most powerful companies in the world, saw its value plunge by a jaw-dropping $92 billion in a single day. That wasn't just a drop. That was a free fall. And it wasn't just Apple. The Dow, the S&P 500, and the Nasdaq all closed in the red. Investors were rattled. Analysts were stunned. The message was clear. Trump's threat wasn't just political drama, it was shaking the foundations of the American economy. Apple losing roughly $92 billion in value today on that news. Trump also saying he's not looking to make a trade deal with Europe after, of course, threatening a 50% tariff on all EU goods. The fear wasn't just about Apple paying a 25% tariff, it was about what would happen next. If Apple was vulnerable, so was Samsung, Google, and every other tech company manufacturing. Overseas, one tweet had triggered a chain reaction of uncertainty, the one thing the market hates more than anything else. In the last 20 minutes of trading, we sold the market off hard. That to me meant that people have no confidence that tomorrow is not going to be what happened today. That we don't know what the next, we're one tweet away from crazy time. And I think exactly what he's saying. You don't know what's coming ahead. And that's why how do you position yourself? We're stuck with the one constant, right? Which everybody can agree on at this point. And that's the uncertainty. The uncertainty. The market can't handle that at all. Nice to see you though. Financial experts began sounding the alarm. This wasn't about just one company being punished. It was about economic instability, trade war flashbacks, and supply chains under threat. Analysts compared it to the trauma markets felt in early 2019 when Trump's trade tensions with China triggered violent sell-offs. Many believed history was repeating itself and this time it could be worse. And here's where things took a dark turn. President Trump didn't back off. In fact, he doubled down. Not only did he demand Apple move production to the US, but he threatened a 50% tariff on all goods imported from Europe. Suddenly, this wasn't just about phones. It was about cars, consumer goods, luxury imports, and a growing sense of chaos. How would a tariff one single company, and why would you want to hurt an American company in that way? It would be more. It would be also Samsung and anybody that makes that product. Otherwise, it wouldn't. Of course, it's likely that a tariff of 25% could mean the costs get passed on to anyone who buys a new phone. Apple has long said it cannot manufacture phones in the United States, given the majority of skilled engineers are abroad, and they're cheaper to keep on the payroll. But also today, Trump said he would recommend a 50% tariff on goods imported from the European Union. Starting June 1st, markets, well, they reacted. The Dow, S&P 500, and Nasdaq all closing down. Investors were left guessing, would the tariffs happen? Would the market crash further? Was this just another Trump bluff or a storm that could actually hit? The markets weren't waiting for answers, they were already reacting. But the real question was, who would blink first, Apple or Trump? President Trump had made his demands clear. iPhones should be made in America, but here's the truth. No one in the White House seemed ready to admit America simply can't do it. Not now, not easily, and definitely not cheaply. The iPhone is more than a smartphone. It's a marvel of engineering, made with parts from 43 different countries assembled in high-tech factories where thousands of workers live on site, sometimes in entire cities built just for production. These are places like Shenzhen, China, where one Foxconn factory alone has more workers than some American towns have people. We just don't have like 18 different things. We don't have the density of the population. We don't have the flexibility of the population. We don't have, 3-kilometer square towns that have 500,000 people inside, which is the sort of thing that you get at Foxconn. I mean, the US is just not a competitor to so many different things. So I'm really in favor of friend sharing, right? Doing this in Mexico, doing this in India, because doing this in Pittsburgh is ludicrous. Let's imagine just for a moment that Apple somehow agreed to move everything back to the US. What would that look like? Experts say it would take 5 to 10 years just to set up the infrastructure. You'd need hundreds of new factories, a trained labor force of thousands, and massive supply chain networks that simply do not exist here. And even if America could build it all, there's the cost. Oh, the cost. Right now, an iPhone sells for around $1,000, but if you made it entirely in the US, that price would skyrocket to $3,500. That's not just expensive, that's out of reach for most Americans. Look at this estimate. My goodness gracious, it would cost $3,500. That is nutter butter, Anderson. That is crazy. So the idea that these tariffs would make the phones actually produced here, to be perfectly honest with you, it's fantasy island, because what would actually happen? Apple would probably either A, eat the tariff costs, or B, they would pass it on to the consumer. But it would not result in what I think Donald Trump actually wants, which is the iPhone being produced here. It would simply put drive-up costs for the American consumer. And here's the kicker. Even Steve Jobs, the late Apple founder, once told President Obama it couldn't be done. Back in 2010, Jobs said America simply didn't have the engineers, the infrastructure, or the flexibility to support iPhone production on US soil. More than a decade later, Tim Cook says the same. Trump's vision might sound patriotic, but in the real world, it's economically dangerous. It risks damaging Apple, hurting consumers, and starting trade wars the US can't afford. Steve Jobs, the late Apple founder and CEO, brought it up to President Obama in 2010, telling him that the US simply didn't have the engineers to support a US-based manufacturing operation, a position that current Apple CEO Tim Cook has echoed. Even if Apple began moving operations to the US right now, industry experts say it would take 5 to 10 years to set up and would dramatically raise the price of an iPhone. Joining me now with more on the story is senior data analyst Harry Enton. So how many Americans own an iPhone? So what happens when political dreams crash into industrial reality? That's where things get truly risky. While the world was busy reacting to Trump's threat against Apple, something much larger was unfolding, something that most people missed. This wasn't just a fight over tariffs, it wasn't just about iPhones or even trade. This was part of a bigger, more dangerous war, a war against the future of innovation itself. Behind the scenes, tech leaders were panicking. Kara Swisher, a respected tech journalist, didn't hold back. She warned that Trump was attacking entire industries, not just companies. Instead of partnering with Silicon Valley to grow America's future, Trump was threatening it into submission. And what do you think it means for tech or for business in general? The president isn't just targeting countries or industries like when he said he would, tariff firms made overseas, but he's now threatening individual companies. Well, that's what he does. I mean, he used to do it by name before in the previous administration. Now he's doing it by company. He can't muscle companies into prices like yelling at Disney or yelling at Apple or whatever. They'll make what they want to make. These are massive global corporations that have business all over the world, and they're as big as some countries, some of these entities. Trump's policies were starting to look like they were pulled from the past when car companies got bullied into setting up shop in Detroit. But iPhones aren't cars, and tech doesn't live in factories. It lives in labs, in research centers, and in the minds of the world's brightest people. That's what made Trump's next move even more shocking. While demanding American-made products, his administration was also targeting foreign students, the very people whose talents have powered US tech for decades. These students come to America to study, innovate, and build companies. Many of them become CEOs, engineers, and founders of billion-dollar startups. This is why the attack against foreign students at American universities, at Harvard right now, could be at others, seems so short-sighted, because if you want stuff being done in the United States, having the best and brightest from all around the world who want to come to the US because we have superior education here and stay in the US and work for companies that are here, this is the exact opposite of what, if Trump wants businesses here, you want the best and brightest from all over coming here. Think about it. Elon Musk, South Africa, Sundar Pichai of Google, India, Satya Nadella of Microsoft, also from India, Sergey Brin, co-founder of Google, Russia. These aren't exceptions. They're the backbone of the US tech empire. Trump's aggressive stance wasn't just hurting diplomacy or business, it was threatening the very thing that made America the innovation capital of the world. If the brightest minds stop coming to America, they'll simply go elsewhere, to China, to Germany, to India, and take the future with them. Now they'll be going back home and doing those things, or they'll be sent back home. The whole thing makes zero sense if we want innovation in the future in AI, in robotics, in advanced medical stuff. All the stuff that's going forward, we have to have a robust pipeline of talent from across the globe. Again, global companies. These are not American companies. They're global companies. So while Trump thought he was defending American jobs, he might have been doing the opposite, closing the door on the next generation of breakthroughs. And as the world races ahead with AI, robotics, and biotechnology, America's edge could start slipping fast. But here's the twist. Trump wasn't done yet. As the world held its breath, one question floated above all others. Was Trump bluffing, or was this just the beginning of something bigger? Inside the Oval Office, Trump wasn't backing down. In front of reporters, he didn't mince words. He claimed the European Union was built to hurt the United States and that decades of unfair trade had to end. His message was crystal clear. This is the game I know how to play, and I'm done letting others win. Everybody, they've treated us very badly over the years. It was formed in order to hurt the United States, in order to take advantage of the United States. And they've done that, and I just said, it's time that we play the game the way I know how to play the game. Nobody. They've taken advantage of other people representing this country, and they're not going to do that any longer. Trump's unpredictability had always been part of his strategy. Analysts joked that America was now one tweet away from chaos and markets had no choice but to react. Confidence was shaken. Business leaders were confused. Economists warned that long-term planning had become nearly impossible. In the last 20 minutes of trading, we sold the market off hard. That, to me, meant that people have no confidence that tomorrow is not going to be what happened today, that we don't know what the next, we're one tweet away from crazy time. And I think exactly what he's saying. You don't know what's coming ahead. So what happens now? Let's break it down. Apple can't afford to manufacture iPhones in the US, not without destroying its business model. Consumers can't afford $3,500 phones. Investors can't risk billions on shifting supply chains that don't exist. And innovation, it doesn't bloom in fear. It blooms in freedom, talent, and open borders. The irony, Trump's pressure might not bring jobs back. It might drive them away. His war on tariffs, tech, and talent risks isolating America just when the world is moving faster than ever before. The assault on research to me is particularly troubling because, it doesn't get a lot of publicity, but, these are doctors, these are all sorts of people doing cutting edge research that takes years to set up, years to attract that kind of talent. To destroy it now, the ripple effects of it can last for decades. And yet, one thing is certain, Trump may have limited time in office, but the companies he's targeting will outlast him. They're global, powerful, and agile, and just like city-states, they'll adapt, form alliances, and move where they need to. Because capitalism doesn't wait, it moves forward relentlessly. In the end, this story wasn't just about Apple, it was about the soul of the American economy, and whether it's driven by power, politics, or progress. And maybe that's the biggest question of all. Is America ready for the future or just clinging to the past? Now listen to how Trump, instead of just taking out his anger on innocent Apple CEO Tim Cook for losing the trade war with China, also threatened the UN with 50% tariffs. After hearing the rest of the video, Trump will seem completely foolish to you. And President Trump saying he wants a straight 50% tariff on the EU beginning June 1st. Therefore, I am recommending a straight 50% tariff on the European Union starting on June 1st of 2025. There is no tariff if the product is built or manufactured in the United States. Quote, the European Union which was formed for the primary purpose of taking advantage of the United States on trade, has been very difficult to deal with. And now we're actually seeing that result in real repercussions, ones that of course are going to be impacting the market today. Quote, I have long ago informed Tim Cook of Apple that I expect their iPhones that will be sold in the United States, that if they do not do that, they will be paying a tariff of at least 25%. Apple already falling roughly 2% in pre-market trading. Imagine waking up to find the global economy on the verge of a trade earthquake and the man behind it all. Donald J. Trump with a tweet so powerful it made stock markets tremble and CEOs scramble. But why now? And why target America's allies and its own tech giants? Something deeper is at play here. Stay with me, because what's happening behind closed doors in Washington is not just a trade shift, it's a transformation of global alliances, American capitalism, and possibly your next iPhone. It was just another Friday morning until the President of the United States dropped a bombshell via social media. Without warning, Donald Trump announced that starting June 1st, 2025, the United States would impose a straight 50% tariff on all goods imported from the European Union. And President Trump saying he wants a straight 50% tariff on the EU beginning June 1st because trade talks are stuck. He is typing away and also going after a US company, a big one, Apple, which is already seeing its stocks get a hit. No loopholes, no exemptions, just raw economic force. And here's where it gets interesting. Trump didn't choose a formal press conference. He didn't address Congress. He went straight to social media, firing off digital shots heard around the financial world. This wasn't a bluff. Trump made it crystal clear. He believes the European Union was formed to take advantage of the United States, and now he's fighting back with what he calls economic justice. But in reality, this move didn't just challenge the EU, it shocked Wall Street. As the tweet spread, futures dropped sharply. Panic began to simmer. What was supposed to be a quiet market day quickly turned into chaos. But here's the catch. Why target the EU now? Especially when the global balance is already rattled with tension in China, Russia, and the Middle East. Why escalate with allies? Who buy billions in American goods and tech? Some believe this is Trump's way of reasserting dominance in global trade talks. Others fear it's the opening salvo in a second Trump-era trade war, one that could reshape the world economy once again. And now we're actually seeing that result in real repercussions, ones that of course are going to be impacting the market today once they open. He wrote, quote, the European Union, which was formed for the primary purpose of taking advantage of the United States on trade, has been very difficult to deal with. He went on to say that there are powerful trade barriers, VAT taxes, He talked about monetary manipulations, etc. as reasons for what he argues is a massive trade deficit with the United States. He went on to say, therefore, I am recommending a straight 50% tariff on the European Union starting on June 1st of 2025. There is no tariff if the product is built or manufactured in the United States. But let's pause and think, what does this mean for average Americans, for your business, your job, or your next trip to Europe? And what role did Italy's prime minister play in trying to stop this from happening? That's exactly where we're headed next. Just when it seemed like Trump was ready to torch trade ties with Europe, a quiet attempt was being made behind the scenes to stop him. Enter Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy. While the world may not instantly recognize her name, inside the White House she was seen as a potential deal-maker, someone who could soothe Trump's frustrations and prevent a global economic blowout. Now here's the twist. Meloni had something few European leaders had, a personal rapport with Trump. She didn't come to Washington as just another EU bureaucrat. She came as a bridge, hoping to speak Trump's language, offering cooperation and possibly even compromise. The EU knew they had a problem and she might have been their only hope to fix it. As Trump administration has been trying to negotiate with, we actually saw the Italian Prime Minister come to the White House earlier a couple of weeks ago to really negotiate on behalf of the European Union because she, unlike a lot of different European countries, has a really good relationship with the United States. But here's the problem. Trump wasn't in the mood for small talk. He believed he had already waited too long. He originally gave the EU 90 days to make progress, but in his view, nothing had changed. To him, they were still hiding behind trade barriers, manipulating currencies, and treating American industries unfairly. So, instead of honoring the 90-day grace period, Trump cut the timeline short, firing off his tariff threat like a warning shot across the Atlantic. This decision marks a dramatic shift in Trump's negotiating style. In his first term, he often used tariffs as a bargaining tool, a way to force countries to the table, but this felt different, more permanent, more personal, and Meloni, despite her efforts, walked away without a deal. So the question is, why the rush? Why is Trump so eager to take action even before his own timeline expired? Some believe he's trying to send a message not just to Europe, but to every trading partner around the globe that under his leadership, America doesn't wait. America strikes, and strike he did. But here's the bigger question. Is this sustainable? Can America afford this new economic nationalism? And what are the long-term consequences for everyday people and small businesses already struggling with supply chain costs? We're about to find out. Because next, we look at how Trump's tariff plan is already sending shockwaves through Main Street America and why the pain might be just getting started. When presidents make big economic decisions, the ripple effect always trickles down. What starts in Washington ends up hitting the checkout counter, the factory floor, and your next Amazon order. And that's exactly what's starting to happen now. Trump's 50% tariff plan on the European Union and his 25% threat on Apple aren't just headlines, they're shockwaves tearing through Main Street America. Let's break it down. Small business owners in places like New Hampshire, Texas, and Ohio, many of them voted for Trump. But now they're facing a new kind of challenge. The cost of materials they import from Europe going up overnight, critical supplies for factories, delayed essential products for stores, suddenly 30% more expensive than last month. I'm hearing from business in New Hampshire is they're very real concerned about tariffs and what it means for their cost of doing business, what it means for their ability to get supplies, materials that are part of their supply chain. It's having a huge impact, and it doesn't stop there. Imagine owning a small furniture company that relies on high-quality leather from Italy, or a bakery that imports premium chocolate from Belgium, or even a construction firm that gets steel fittings from Germany. Suddenly, your entire pricing model collapses and you're left with two impossible choices: raise prices on your customers or eat the cost and hope to survive. Now let's talk about consumers. Trump's demand for Apple to bring iPhone production back to America may sound patriotic, but the real cost? If Apple complies or even tries to, experts estimate iPhones could jump by several $100s per unit. That's no small hike. That's the difference between buying the latest tech or skipping an upgrade entirely. Almost everybody in the country has an iPhone. Now, they're not all Apple iPhones, but for those of us who do, those are going to cost more. It's going to have a ripple effect across the economy. And I don't think that's the best way for us to address the concerns around our trade imbalance and around what we need to do to ensure that America is strong when it comes to trade with the rest of the world. Now multiply that across industries: cars, wine, clothes, tools, electronics. The average American could end up paying thousands more per year just to maintain the same lifestyle. And for families already feeling the squeeze from inflation, higher rents and food prices, this couldn't come at a worse time. But here's the deeper fear among economists and business leaders. What if these tariffs are not just a tactic, but a belief system? What if this America First strategy isn't temporary, but permanent? Suddenly, uncertainty becomes the norm. And in business, uncertainty is poison. In fact, some in Washington are calling for a constitutional challenge to these tariffs. They're arguing that the president is using trade laws in ways never intended, bypassing Congress and disrupting the entire free market system. And if they win in court, the entire tariff system could be declared unconstitutional. That's how serious this is getting. Let's move this quickly through the courts and get a decision by the Supreme Court that I think will say resoundingly that the whole episode is unconstitutional. So what we're watching right now isn't just a trade dispute, it's a battle over the soul of American capitalism. One side says protect local jobs at all costs, the other says let the market decide, not the government, and caught in the middle, millions of Americans who just want to live, work, and thrive. But there's one final question we haven't answered yet, a question that could define the next 4 years of Trump's presidency and America's place in the world. Will this strategy work, or will it backfire politically, economically, and diplomatically? Now that we've seen the smoke rising from Europe to Silicon Valley to small-town America, one question looms over it all. What is Donald Trump really after? Is this just about trade? About balancing a deficit on paper? Or is there something much bigger at play, something deeper, more strategic, even historical? To understand where this is going, we need to look not just at what Trump said, but how he said it. No formal meetings, no economic white papers, just tweets, raw, direct, unapologetic. It tells us that this isn't just a policy, it's a performance, a spectacle, a power play. And Trump isn't negotiating, he's declaring. President Trump just threatened to hit the European Union with a 50% tariff on all imported goods. He says negotiations are not making any progress. You can see stock futures turning sharply lower. Really, the minute he made that threat, he's also threatening Apple, saying if it does not move production and manufacturing of its iPhones to the US, that the company, just that one company, will be hit by a 25% tariff. But is it working? That depends on how you measure success. If the goal is to grab headlines and shift global attention, mission accomplished. If the goal is to shake up the status quo and force global leaders to the table, again, mission accomplished. But if the goal is to strengthen America's economy long-term without hurting the people who power it, that's still a massive question. Mark, some in the business world had hoped these tariffs were just bargaining chips. temporary, reversible. But with this new wave of threats and direct attacks on allies and American corporations, many now fear that Trump genuinely believes in permanent trade barriers. He's not looking to negotiate the system, he's looking to rewrite it. They hope that the tariffs were just a bargaining tool, just a tool to fix some things, and then everything would go back to normal. I don't know that this is enough for some of those true believers, but for everybody else, I just ask, look at what he's doing. He believes in these tariffs. This is going to continue as long as he is in office. That's what makes this so different from previous trade wars. This isn't just Trump playing hardball with China. This is a worldview, a new economic doctrine, and it's already shifting America's image on the global stage. Allies are confused. Competitors are watching. Some may even be cheering quietly, hoping America isolates itself so they can step in. And politically, Trump is betting big that American voters will support this bold, almost combative strategy, that they'll see tariffs as patriotism and rising prices as a price worth paying for economic independence. But history has shown when the economy feels pain, leaders feel pressure fast. So, where does that leave us? In a world that's changing fast, where supply chains span continents and markets move at the speed of a tweet, the old rules are breaking down, and what Trump is building in their place, that remains uncertain. What is certain though is this: the global economy just entered a new chapter, and it started not with a warship but a smartphone and a tariff. So now the question comes to you: was this a smart move by Trump to bring jobs back to America, or a dangerous gamble that could isolate us from the future? Should Apple be forced to manufacture in the US no matter the cost, or is globalization the only path forward? And what happens if the talent, technology, and innovation we once attracted starts going elsewhere? I want to hear what you think. Was Trump protecting American workers or risking everything for political points? Drop your thoughts in the comments, agree, disagree, or anything in between. This conversation is bigger than Apple. It's about where the world is headed and whether America can